Thank you for tuning in to Business School, the official podcast of the Dan Roberts Academy.
Yeah.
So, welcome to another episode of the Business School podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ashley Borden. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm very happy because we've had our first off-air conversation ever just now. And normally we only talk on podcasts on an interview, so it's quite nice.
This is true. And the whole time I was like, maybe we should just be having this conversation on the podcast. But no, this is good. I mean, it's so good to see you again, online. But that's what I love about the internet is that I get to see my friends. And by the way, did you ever get your Rolga depuffing kit?
You know what? I got a notification from the Royal Mail today that there's a package for me. So I think that's it because no one ever sends me anything. So
okay, then that's it.
I think it's in the postal office. So tomorrow I'm going to drive over and get it. So thank you for that gift.
Oh yeah. I'm so excited to see. How it feels, how you use it. And what you think. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I will. Yeah. I'll do a little video about it afterwards.
Of course.
So this is a new podcast, actually. This is all about the business of coaching, essentially. It's called the Business School Podcast. And I want to kind of tap into your business brain as opposed to your personal training expertise, which we talked about last time in our last podcast. I think just to give you some context, for people who don't know you, I'd like to sort of talk about you a little bit to see what I've got you on. I mean, I've been a big fan of you for many years. And in my mind, you're kind of like, you've made it. In terms of training, you've made it. And we all have different definitions of success. But for me, it's because you're, people who can afford any trainer will pick you. You've been in the industry for a long time. You're respected by the media, the national or international media, and your peers. You've stayed relevant. And now you're giving back, or you have done for quite a few years. You're helping other trainers succeed. So for me, you've kind of reached it at the top. And that's why I'm very honored that you're on my podcast. And I can't wait to pick your brain today.
Dan, thank you. By the way, what kind words. I really appreciate that.
That's true. It's true. How do you define success when it comes to your job?
My personal success is when I am able to make a aha change in somebody's life. Like when it clicks with them and they're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I get why we're doing this. I finally have a good connection with my body. Like that to me is success when all the things that I am doing, whether it's also somebody's business, whether it's somebody's body, whether it's the way they're running their business, whether it's the way they're even communicating in life. I mean, it's all connected. So that's my first, like, I love that when that happens. I also love the game of business. I have loved it always. And I just look at it as a very big game and I love it.
Interesting. In what way? Tell me more about that.
Well, okay, I'll tell you because I'd say up until my 20s, right? When I moved, I'm from Chicago. So when I moved to LA, by the way, ignorance is bliss, right? This is before social media. So I did not know the statistics of like moving to LA, starting to be a trainer, or I don't know. I was just like, I'm gonna move to LA. I think at the time I was doing commercial work. I had an agent in Chicago and I was working, right? Again, no idea that everybody just didn't get an agent and start working. That's what I started doing, right?
Yeah.
So when I moved to LA, I went to an audition and I was at a freaking Baywatch audition, okay? And I sat in front of these casting directors saying whatever lines it was, and they were like, okay, no. Now, next person. And I remember I was like, what am I doing? Like, there's no worth in what I'm doing. I'm not giving back to anybody. And I'm at the mercy of somebody else telling me yes or no. And it was a changing moment for me where I was like, oh, F this. I want to be in control of the yes or the no's. And that's when I started changing my mindset and deciding like, I'm going to make this business the way I want to make this business. And I do come from a family of like people who run their own businesses. So it didn't seem that odd to me. And I am a very scrappy person. So to me, it was like the game and understanding the business of business was the last 30 years of training. Do you know what I mean? But I think mixed with being a good person and being very driven. I'm a very hard
So
worker.
what were your goals like? Because you've done a lot. I mean, you not only do you sort of train these amazing clients, but you've created your, is it AB Fit, right?
It's so
Or
so
Ab
the
Fit? I never know. Is it
yeah,
AB or
it's AB Fit programs are
Okay.
actually, the abbreviation is Ashley Bryan, actually, because Brian Redfern is my he's the
Oh
co-coach
yeah,
and
yeah,
trainer and creator of the programming.
yeah. He's a good
So
weightlifting coach, isn't he?
he is. He
Yeah,
was my weightlifting coach
yeah,
for
yeah,
about 11 years. So the AB Fit programs are all of them are in the gym except for the Hot at Home series that are all dumbbell programs that are inside your house. Um, so yeah, so I have those. I have streaming programs. I created retreats. I'm an author. I have a
yeah. You've
podcast.
done a lot. That's the thing. You're not just a successful trainer. You've got your 6 weeks to sculpted, your SOS plan. You're obviously one of the
Yep.
star trainers of Revenge
Revenge
Body.
Body.
Yeah, you do a lot. You do a
But you know,
lot.
but you know what, Dan? I think part of it is because years ago, early on in my career, right?
Yeah.
I worked around. This is why I work around other trainers, right? And I would see these other trainers in their 50s
Mm.
suffering in the gym, for real, like
Yeah.
suffering, like still week to week with their paychecks and struggling. And I remember being like, you know what? I need to have my other mantra, multiple streams of passive income, multiple streams of passive income, multiple streams of passive income, along with my personal training. So
Yeah.
all the projects of things that I've done have been in alignment with, does this fit the multiple streams of passive income if I'm going to do this project, and that I own it? Because I did a bunch of projects. By the way, as every trainer should, right? I've been hired by other companies, as I know you have, to work and create content. And it wasn't until I was like approached by a lot of companies that wanted to buy content from me, and I was like, shit, I don't own this. What
Yeah.
am I doing? So then I
Yeah.
started owning my own content. And that was also life changing, because I was like, I can, I have deals with different companies to stream my program.
Taking
So
ownership. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's
So,
good.
but it's one thing at a time. You know what I mean? It's been one thing at a time.
It's funny you said that about kind of the motivation for multiple streams, because I remember that my biggest motivation to I guess try to be successful, however we define that, was watching 50-year-old trainers in like, Virgin Active and LA Fitness, kind of like mid-range gyms in England, and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to be, it sounds a bit
Right.
snobby, but I don't want to be, making $20 an hour and selling people protein shakes and cleaning weights when I'm 50. And it
Right.
scared me.
We're
Yeah.
not being disrespectful. Those are the trainers, right, who have not looked at the bigger picture of their business or their career,
Yeah.
in that aspect. But by the way, I mean, I don't want to discourage any trainer for starting, but again, this is what we're talking about, is the bigger picture of business. When
Yeah. And also what motivates us. And my point was, like, for me, it wasn't like, I want to fly around the world and train celebrities. It's like, no, I just don't want that. Like, I got motivated more by the stick as opposed to the carrot. Like and it's still now the idea of having like a boring life it motivates me more than trying to have a really interesting one, if that makes sense.
Well, I think also because you care about, well, you can't get into this business, right? You can't be in this business and work in a high level clientele, which is actually one of the programs in the business course that I have coming out. But you can't want to work with high end clientele, and that's your goal when you start training, because you'll never work with that demographic then.
Yes,
Because
it's funny
it,
irony, isn't it?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you have to want to work with everybody, and then but the people who are missile seekers for celebrities, and that they don't last.
It is funny because I'm sure, because obviously in London, like you in LA, I get, because I train a lot of people who are well known, a lot of
Mhm.
trainers ask me, oh, how do I train celebrities? I'm sure you get this a lot because a lot of our clients are
Yes.
well known. And it's like, God, even asking that question means you probably never will.
Yeah, yes. That's and I don't mean
Yeah.
that rudely.
Yeah.
What you
The
just
wrong
said is
question to ask. It's the wrong question.
exactly. And because that question in itself puts the quote celebrity on a pedestal, right? And to me, if you're a celebrity and you are, okay, so let's say you're a actress, Okay, that's what you want to do for a living. You want to be an actress and you're a successful one. Well, guess what? I want to be a trainer and I'm a successful one too. So it's perfect because we're together. I don't secretly want to be an actress and I hate you secretly, or I'm secretly a stalker and I just want to be here so I could be in your
Well, look,
presence.
you're in LA. I'm sure you get a lot of trainers who secretly want to be actors in LA, right?
Yes, and it's very I mean, yeah, or they talk about that's another thing. I'm like, "Okay, if you're an actor, this is just me. This is just my personal opinion." I have a couple trainer friends that are also actors. It's very rare. But my feeling is if you're an actor and you're a trainer taking people's money, don't talk about your other career.
Yeah.
I don't want to know it because if you're training me, Dan, and you're like, "Oh my God, Ashley, my commercial audition I went in yesterday," when I'm sitting here doing squats, I want to throw the bar down and be like, "Will you shut up and focus on me right now?"
I, I
Like I don't
sent I sent one of my quite famous British director over to a trainer I use in LA to look after, like who runs like a boutique studio, and my client got pitched a script from the trainer. It's
nope.
like, no, that's
Nope.
not cool. I was so not happy with that, but
Okay, but
yeah,
Dan, this is what I mean. I again back to the section of high end clientele that I
yeah,
that's coming out, right? I have so many stories, and here's another quick one. And these stories I think are more telling than even us sitting here trying to pontificate about it. But when okay, so if just because you don't, I didn't grow up in a billionaire family or a millionaire family. Okay. I didn't grow up around tons of wealth, but I'm not uncomfortable around tons of wealth. And I'm also not uncomfortable that it's not mine. Like,
mhm,
it's okay that you're a gazillionaire and I'm the trainer and I'm doing this because that's what I want to do. But if you have a chip on your shoulder, right, and
yeah.
you get into this demographic of that's very wealthy and you're like, oh, excuse me. Well, if I had all this money, I wouldn't be like blah, blah, blah. Or you're having these conversations in your head. It's like, you you can't work with this demographic, right? And I just my whole thing is like live your best life, be a royalty, be whatever gazillionaire. I'm still the trainer and I want to help you. Your body still needs help and you're tight in your lats.
Well, that comes with confidence, knowing that what you're comfortable in
Yeah.
your job, and also another aspect of that is being comfortable in your skin. Like if you've got major kind of body image issues, and like you're training someone who's got like a better body than you, but then you can't, they're complaining about their bum being too big when you think it's amazing, then that could be projected. You have to be so comfortable that a client can be completely honest. And that's why sometimes I find being a male trainer, sometimes it's quite easy to train young women because they find it sometimes hard to find young female trainers they're not competing against. If that
Oh,
makes sense.
interesting. You know what?
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
get that a
even
lot. Some of the models I work with, they don't like working with female trainers because I've trained quite a lot of Victoria's Secret girls,
Mhm.
and some of them don't like training with other women because they've had some issues with that.
Well, I
And you
mean,
don't get
look,
guys,
I
you get guys trying to come onto them and you get the seediness, but that's a danger. But you don't get the comparison of bodies as much.
that's true. And I that's interesting. And I think also it's just the smell factor of the person, right? Like I want to help everybody, like whether you're a Victoria's Secret model or you're obese and overweight, it doesn't matter either way. I'm still just as invested. Um, but again, it's the separation. It, this is what I was trying to explain. It's like in business, right? It's hard when we're in an interpersonal business like we are in, right? It's
Mhm.
very interpersonal. It feels sometimes, quote, casual. I say that in quotes, but there is
Yeah.
no casual money being exchanged. So none of
Mm.
this money is casual, right? So the game, that's when I say the game, right? Because it's not that I'm being inauthentic, but the whole time I'm with a client, I am aware that I am with a client. It is never lost on me that I'm with a client ever, whether I'm casually at dinner or because I'm on tour or something, but I don't,
Yeah.
it's never lost on me what my position is. When that gets lost on a trainer, when you get sucked into this environment where you think all of a sudden that you're part of the posse, you guys are friends, that's when you get lost in what you you can't self-regulate anymore. And the
Yeah, the
self-regulating is what you
boundaries are just
but
gone,
that's
aren't
what
they?
you
Yeah.
have, Dan, is the self-regulation. That's hard to teach people, that self-regulation. You have to look at the longevity of your business. That's why I've been in this business so long, because always looking at my longevity. I'm not looking at the moment in front of me.
Yeah. You know, a really interesting point you made there, because it's something I do as well a lot, is I always remind myself, like every minute someone's paying me, like whatever it is, like $5 a minute, I guess now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money. So every
Yeah.
minute. So if I'm, you know, if I'm not adding value in some way, then I'm not being good value at all. And because like you, I charge a lot, I need to be offering a lot of value because I'm very expensive. And it's,
Right.
I've never forgotten that. I've always, like, from day one, I've always, like, you know, back when it was like, you know, like 10 cents a minute, I was still conscious that every minute people are paying for my time. And
Have
it
you
made
ever
me conscious
oh,
of that.
have you
Sorry.
ever paid for a trainer or for yourself? Like, have you ever paid for somebody else's service?
Not a personal trainer, but I've paid for all kinds of like kung fu teachers, gymnastics
Right.
teachers, stuntmen, all kinds of
Okay.
trainers.
So the fact that you've paid for this also, even subconsciously, makes you understand the value of that time spent with your trainer client
Of course.
situation, right?
Yeah.
But trainers who don't do that, who've never paid for time service like that, really
Yeah.
don't
Good point.
understand what the difference is. They're like, I'm 5 minutes late. I'm like, you're 5 minutes fucking late. First of all, you should be 15 minutes early. Let's just start with that. And
Yeah.
5 minutes is a whole warm up. Like,
Yeah.
it's understanding the value of time in yourself and just what you're giving. But there's, like you were saying before, there's so many layers underneath running your business. And I think the most important thing for trainers, new or old coaches, is you have to have boundaries and good communication. And that all
Hmm.
starts with your waiver. If you have no written waiver, good luck.
What's on
Because
your waiver? Tell me what's on your
okay,
waiver.
so my waiver is 2 pages. They have to sign and initial each paragraph so they have read it and understand.
Uh-huh.
My waiver has time cancellation policy.
Okay.
They cannot exchange the sessions with somebody else unless I approve. There
Hmm.
is a year expiration date on it. They if they are late to their session, the session starts at said time, ends at said time. It is not, I am not going over because they're late.
Yeah.
It has my insurance information on it. It has, if we go to court, information that's on it. It's them signing their liability also
Yeah. Good.
for partaking in exercise. Um, and so it just lays out all of the boundaries of what if they're my cancellation policy. I have a 24-hour cancellation policy. Everything's written out, right? The difference would be that is that if I was traveling with you, Dan, like if you were my client and you hired me to travel with you, then
Hmm.
I would create a travel waiver, and that's different, right? So that in that travel waiver, it explains how I'm picked up at my house, how I travel, what class of travel I am flying, what class of hotel I'm staying at, how I'm traveling in the hotel, what my per diem is, what my fee is, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So then it's all written out ahead of
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have the same. I mean, the travel ones I have came from experience. When I first went away, I was like,
Exactly.
wow, I need to write this down.
Oh,
A lot of these
how?
things happen from experience, don't they? Yeah.
Why? What happened? Tell me, like, what are your
Well,
thing? What?
just you know, like first trips abroad, and like when people are pay families and like royal families and stuff, and it's like, and you just, you know, accommodation, and you just learn. You learn after when you've done one trip or one big
Do
thing, you're like, okay, that needs to be clearer.
you want to hear
Payment.
the most expensive lesson I ever
Ooh,
learned? When I
yeah.
was young trainer and I was on tour with Christina Aguilera,
Hmm.
and this is also, like, I don't know how many years ago this was, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and to 18 years ago, and we were in the hotel and I didn't like know about like the phone cards and everything. So I was like using my cell phone and like calling everybody, because I thought I was like on this plan. And then I came back home and I got a bill for like thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not kidding. And this is when I was like broke trainer.
Yeah.
And it was like half of what I made when I went. I mean, I called the phone company. I was like trying to like pitch I was an idiot, but it was such an expensive lesson. And like, eating in the hotel. Like, are they paying for the food that I'm eating in this
Yeah, you
hotel?
don't
Am I
know until
not?
you, and also how much you charge. You don't know until you first do a couple of these things. You know what? The last one I did before lockdown, um, there was something which happened to me which I hadn't accounted for because it had never happened to me before, but I'm going to make sure it never happens again.
What?
I was with a princess, and I was part of her entourage traveling
Right.
around a country, and I was there for a week, and I was paid very well for it, but I only did in total maybe 25 minutes training and
Of
of the
work.
whole
Yep.
week, and I
Yep.
don't want to
Which
make money.
happens.
I didn't want to make money that way. So
Yep.
I was like, I'm not going to do that again, because it's like, I just felt like part of their, along with her tango teacher and her photographer and the whole shebang, the whole crew, we're all just sitting there and we're like, some of them were like loving it, but I don't want to make my money this way.
Because why? Because you felt
Because my
what?
job as a coach, not to sit around taking rich people's money. I want to teach. I've got loads of
Mm-hmm.
people who want to work with me. And if I wanted to make lots of money, I would have been a hedge funder or a lawyer or something else. I wouldn't have been a personal trainer. You don't go into this making money. The fact that I've made a living is amazing, but you don't get into the fitness industry to make millions.
Right. I mean, the first thing that should bring the first thing that is the first thing that should bring you into it is wanting to help people. I mean, that's not even that you like working out. I've heard people who are like, oh my God, I love working out, so I want to be a trainer. I'm like, no.
You'll have no time.
That's not what you would. You want to be an educator if you want to be a trainer. It's not about you working out, and doing that. But see, those are the lessons. I remember I had a client, an international client from Italy who did not speak very good English. And I flew to New York to train her for a week. And this is before I had my written waiver. And we talked about it, but she didn't speak English really well. And I get to New York, I get to this beautiful hotel, and she tells me to come meet her in her room. I go up, I knock on the door, she opens up the door, and I see behind her that there's 2 king size beds with like the corner turned down with like the chocolate on the corners. And she was like, no, you're staying here, like in the room with her. And I was like, oh, wait, what? I was like, wait, what's happening here? But I had trained her for a while before when she'd come into LA. So it wasn't like, she wasn't like a brand new client, but I was still working on my boundaries. It was so awkward. I was frozen staying in this. And then the next day I said, I need to have my own room, but that's just the stuff that can happen. And it was just the way that I after communicated with her in a way that wasn't disrespectful, but I was so uncomfortable. I was like, okay, and then I wasn't quite sure. I was like, maybe this is a different
I've
kind of
got
trip.
a story which I'm definitely not going to share on air, but involves a Russian oligarch and guns and bags of money, which
God, this sounds like a great
dodgy,
story.
got really dodgy. I'll tell you about it off air. I'm not going to talk about it now. But
oh my God.
You get some, I'll tell you about it later, but there's some really odd situations one gets ourselves in as trainers. It's
wait, let me think. That sounds like let's see, what's the most awkward? Yours involved guns and drugs. Were there drugs?
Money, a Russian oligarch in St. Petersburg.
I think the oddest one for me was I was training a family that had rented out the entire top floor of a hotel. And then but this is like a public hotel that had a lot of people in it, but then they would block off the gym and not let anybody else in it other than the royalty of the female that I don't even know her name. I still don't even know their names. And she loved it so much. She was like, I want you to come with us to Saudi Arabia. And I was like, no. I was like, first of all, I don't even know. They wouldn't even tell me their names. And, they were lovely that I was training here, but I was like, no, I'm not, that's a big thing in LA. They have a lot of, we get a lot of visiting people from other countries that will say, and a lot of royalty that will say, it's a great, this is Dan, this is the one that I learned early on. By the way, great vacation for you. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to come with our family to Bali. You'll be there for 2 weeks. You could stay in your, beautiful place. You're just going to train us and you get a free vacation and we get to work out, AKA we're not paying you. And it's like, no, you guys, that is no.
Yeah, I learned that early on.
I had to learn. Yes.
I was like, not again.
It's not a vacation.
No. Look, so when it comes to business, I guess we can talk a little bit about like this providing a service, because as coaches, our product is quite often, well, actually for both of us now, we have products and services. How did you kind of decide to develop those? So you started out, you were a trainer first, and you had in your mind, you knew about passive income. That was kind of drilled into you by your entrepreneurial family. But what was the first kind of step to get passive income and to think a bit more about building your brand in that way?
I'll tell you, I had the opportunity. I was hired by Livestrong women back in the day. I think it was before Livestrong imploded.
Yeah,
And it was when YouTube was giving a lot of money to channels to develop
yeah, they were
content.
great. They were shooting great content, and they were
Yeah.
really well respected before that all happened. Yeah,
Yeah, and Livestrong Woman had a great channel. They still do. Then I had a show that was on it, and it was called Perfect Form. And I was on with some other experts. They had their own shows, and we did it. I did like every Tuesday, created content. That was when it was my introduction into creating a lot of content and being able to do it. Adam Bornstein was the creative director, I think, at the time, and he was the one who really gave me like an opportunity to do something that was outside of my wheelhouse.
yeah.
Um, and that was when I had people approaching me and asking me about that content specifically, and they wanted to license it from me. And I said, "Oh, I don't own that. That's Livestrong's content." And then I was like, "Wait, hold up. Why don't I didn't understand at the time about owning it." So that was when it was the first thought. And then again, I didn't know anything about anything. And I just started asking. This is why I tell people you can't do this on your own. You have to ask people. So I started asking people who I respected if they knew anyone that was in production, so I could get some numbers to see, oh, maybe I'll pay for my own production and create my own content. And I started getting these numbers from these companies that were like, I'm not kidding, Dan. I had one guy quote me $80,000. I was like, first of all, if I had $80,000, I am not spending it on producing a DVD, you asshole.
Yeah.
And way to gouge me. I ended up using Fit Life Productions, and they were freaking fantastic. Rachel and Jevin Dovey, I think is their last name, but Fit Life Productions. And that's how it started. Just was asking people, and I saved
And
my
was
money.
this your 6 weeks to Sculpted, or was this something
The
before?
the first by the way, like Gaiam had hired me before. I'd done content for Gaiam. I'd created content for uh, equipment for them too. And I've done Spry. I did DVDs for them that were fitness DVDs that were very successful. But again, I didn't
Yeah.
own them. This was
Yeah.
6 weeks to Sculpted, which was my first streaming program. And that ended up getting picked out of hundreds of streaming programs as the top number one program for Fitness Magazine out of the top 10 uh that included Tony Horton. And I mean it was incredible. It was like it was incredible, but it was a labor of love and it was a lot of work. And then I did another one after that called The Body Foundation.
But it's
So
so
I have those
important
two.
because quite often when trainers look at like your career and it's like, you're on TV, you've got books, you're doing these things. It's like, you've got to remember it's all stepping stones. And like, you've got to do these labor of loves, and
Oh,
you get the book, you tick, you do the program, tick, and you go
and
abroad with a famous client, tick, and they all build up. And then you become relevant and you become, what other people deem as successful.
right. But people, okay, here's the thing. The thing that people know about me is that I'm a great trainer, right? That they know about Dan is that he's a great trainer and then everything else comes from there, right? People aren't just like, that's why I and you too have longevity is also because I continually try to evolve as a coach also, but with business and all that. And coaching trainers was just a natural next step for me because it would kill me to see these trainers who are great that were really struggling with their businesses. And um, so I would start helping trainers and doing this and meeting them for lunch and doing this. And then I had trainers that were like, I want to actually pay you to help me with this part of my business. And that was years ago. And then I've been doing this private coaching for
Mhm.
years with trainers. And I mean, I'm talking like trainers quadrupling their income after just having 1 hour and a half session where we figured out what the fuck was blocking them. Do you know what I
What
mean?
are the common blocks, or what are the common issues people come with?
Common blocks: time use and understanding how to put together clients and what your offer is, right? Like um one of my clients that I had, Vinny, who was he was a great trainer, but he was not also able to ask for what I felt he was worth, and so we would go over like, how you actually, the actual verbal communication of how you're presenting this to a client. Like it got that minutia, right? Where it was like, here's how you're going to text this client and say X, 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 X. And then he's going to respond back and say this. And then you're going to say this.
Yeah,
And
I
he would
love
just,
it.
it just started working, right?
Sales coaching, yeah.
Yeah, but in a way that was not from the sales point, was more from the client. Like I'm on the side of the client too, where I'm like, look at this client's not going to understand why is this X amount of dollars if I can just do it here, right? And then you just need to explain it to them this way and not in a tone. Like we go over tone. I'm going over like there's so much little minutia that's involved in it. And so once like people understand the offer, right? So whether it's a lot of traders are like, I'm training so many hours, I'm burnt out and I'm hardly making any money. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's because you're not charging enough hourly. You don't have semi-private group classes. You don't have a streaming, you don't have anything that you're offering that's online, right? You don't have a class to drop people into. I have a whole system of how I never turn people away because I can funnel them and still work with them in a way that I keep in my orbit.
Yeah.
And that's part of what the coaching courses that are coming out is all about, like that. I want to tell everybody, like, this is how you guys, Dan, don't you feel like a lot of trainers are like this, so like hide their shit. They don't want to share anything to teach you because I don't know. I'm not like that.
No, well, I find the trainers like you who are kind of successful, and they're successful for the right reasons
Mm.
because they're good, are very open. I find ones who are sort of maybe famous, but and success come from
Interesting.
fame, aren't necessarily as open because, in my experience, they don't really know because there's different way. I mean, success is an odd thing, isn't it? Like we both have a similar definition of success. Where
What's
a
your
lot of it,
definition?
well, it comes from like you. I care what my peers think of me. And for a lot of people, for a lot of trainers are like, no, don't give a fuck about other trainers because they're never
I
going to
do.
be audience. And I'm like, yeah, but I do. I do want to,
Mhm.
I do want to be called out by other trainers, like trainers I respect. I want them
Mhm.
to, that's like a gauge whether I'm doing the right thing or not.
Me
So
too.
I
Yes.
care about your opinion. I care about, certain key figures in the industry. I don't want them to think I'm a joke. And they're like, I'd rather, if that means making less money, so be it, because I value that.
Mhm.
But like, like your career, I think longevity is really important. I think innovation is key because there's a danger when you've just been doing it for a long time. Like you and I could both not release any new product and we'll still always be busy as private trainers because
Right.
we've trained so many people, but you get lazy. So I think constantly kind of reinventing yourself or creating new products or creating new services, expanding your brand is a really important part of it.
And I think that, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like if you don't understand social media, there was also a period of time, right, when some of my peers that were older than me that were like, "Oh, I don't understand social media. I don't want to do it." And I'm like, "Oh, this is like you're missing. This train is like you
It
have
is
to."
hard for this unless you do. I mean, I think I'm like 44. You're a couple of years older than me, but
I am 50.
I know you are.
Mhm, yeah,
You look
I
amazing.
love you.
You look
Yeah,
fabulous.
thank you.
But
Thank you.
this kind of age group where we didn't need social media, like we built our
Mhm.
careers pre-social media, it's very easy to be like, well, we don't need it. And we don't really need it. But if we do embrace it, it makes life
Right,
a lot easier.
but it depends on what you're using it for, right? For
True.
me, I
Yeah.
use social media specifically for my business. I mean, like my Ashley Borden fitness page is to give you free content of great informational content, which I know you do too.
Mhm.
Refer you to the right
Not
products.
really. Not as much as
Yes,
you
you
do.
do.
Not
Yes, you
really.
do.
Not
But
really. But
refer
yeah.
you to products of things that
Yeah.
I really actually use and I think you would appreciate and use
Yeah,
too.
you're really good on it. You're very consistent. You're very good on
My
it. But
God, I don't feel like it's so funny, Dan. I, I don't feel like I'm consistent. I'm like, oh, every I don't we always think everybody else. I'm like,
no,
who's this other person that's all more consistent than I am? I'm like,
no, I think
try.
you're really good at social media, and it is part of when you run a business, it is part of a marketing strategy and part of your branding strategy, and it's still free pretty much.
It is. I mean,
So
like,
yeah.
right? Because that's the vision. So when people, okay, here's another thing. When I coach trainers, right, who are like, I hate social media. I'll say, okay, let's back it up. Let's back up. What do you hate about it? And they'll say, it ends up being something like, I don't want to show myself,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to show myself. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing. if you're a personal trainer, right? If you're an attorney, no one cares what you look. I don't care what you don't show yourself. Just give me some advice of what to do with the law, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a personal trainer, um, or you do hair or you do skin, or there is an immediate visual assumption that somebody has to have that says, does this person know what they're talking about? Right now, I'm not saying that you have to be an Adonis. And I'm also not saying that you have to be a ripped six-pack person by any means. And by the way, if you are somebody who's starting a journey as a trainer and this is who I am, that's your platform of this is who I am. I'm
Mm.
still, I don't have to be perfect to help anybody. But that's a misconception with trainers. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I think yeah, I mean, I know you know
Well,
what I
look at
mean,
me. I
but
clearly don't believe that. It's like,
yeah, but
yeah.
Dan, you're in great shape because you're also a great athlete, right? Like I look at your stuff and I'm like, oh my God, Dan's such a better athlete. I could never go out and run all this. You're like out running, like, I don't know what you're doing. You have your phone, you're running 20 miles, then you're like at a stream. Like, I'm like, I would never like, I'm like, I don't have that endurance to
But I
do
mean,
that.
look, I think you have to use, I mean, when you're marketing yourself, you have to use what you've got,
Yeah.
If I was a former bodybuilder and I love bodybuilding, I'm sure there'll be more pictures of my top off on my Instagram. But because I'm not into training to look a certain way, it doesn't interest me that much. My credibility comes from how hot my clients look, not how hot I look, and also my qualifications and my experience. I tend to talk about that because that gets me business. Me showing my biceps will not impress anybody. So
But
you
I
have to
think with
use what
you,
you've
it's
got.
also, but I think with you, like if I were to say, oh, if I was talking about Dan Roberts, I would say also you are very mind body connected, but like that's a big thing with you. And so
Yeah.
that's what I get from your training too, is that there's a mind body connection with everything that you put out there. Cause you're either talking about an intention or you're talking about something physical. So to me, it's very clear, like the type of trainer, you
Great.
know.
That's great. That's how I wanted it to be.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
sometimes we need somebody to give us that um feedback. Do you know what I mean? It's like we live in a vacuum, I think, a lot of times. So sometimes like I don't know how people I actually do know how people receive me because I've asked, but some people
Yeah.
don't know how people receive them, right? And it's in business. Okay, here's another business thing, especially as trainers. If you don't know how people receive you, you're going to be fucked.
Mm.
And I will tell you what I mean by that. It's like years ago, I did a years ago when I think I was still a teenager. I did a course with a guy named Sam Christensen, and we had to find our what our 7 essences were. Right? This was like I was like, what? So we had a piece of paper that had like 100 adjectives on it. Please stop me if I told you the story before. It's amazing though.
No, I
And
don't think
and
so.
this is obviously before 9/11, and this is when the airport was like people were hanging out in airports. And so there was like 10 of us, and this is part of our class. We went to the airport with
Mm.
this page that had 100 adjectives on it. And so we would go in a group and I would be like, okay, Dan, go stand over there in the corner, just like a normal person, just stand over there. And then we would go to this group of people who are waiting. And I would say, can you do me a favor? We're doing this thing for a class. Can you take this piece of paper and it has these adjectives on it? Can you just look at that guy standing over there? And will you just check off all of the adjectives that you feel apply to him just by looking at him? Right.
Yeah.
So we did this until we got 100 things for each person. And then we would go back and average out what all the all the adjectives were that came back. Okay. And
Yeah.
it was life changing for so many and myself, because this is the way that people were receiving you without you even speaking or doing anything. Right. And I had low self-esteem at the time when I was doing this. And my adjectives came back as like adventurous, confident, sexy, blah, 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 all these things. And I was like, what? I it was the opposite of really what I was feeling, but it's what I put out there, I guess.
And
I was
and I think it's good to remember we're always communicating, even if we're not saying anything, by the clothes, by the way we dress, by
all
our manner, we're always communicating. If you run a business, you have to be, I like you, I help a lot of trainers and gym owners with their branding and their marketing and sort of mentoring side of things. And a lot of it, when it comes to branding, people think it's just about social media, but it's actually the whole package. Like if you own a gym, like what's the smell like? What's the music like? What do the receptionists say? Everything sends a message. And like I said, the clothes you wear,
you,
so are you wearing really tight t-shirts? Are you kind of like casual, iron t-shirt or not? Whatever it is, it sends a message, and you can't pretend you don't give a shit. You have to care about it.
But I mean, you could pretend you don't give a shit because you know what that also says to the client? You don't give a shit. I mean, that's the vibe you're putting out, right? I mean, there's overly caring about it, but I think even more
You need to
minutia-ish
be
than
conscious. You need to be conscious of it, though. That's my
totally,
point.
totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. Even if you are a casual vibe or you're like, you have a different look. It's like if that's your confidence of who you are and how you present yourself, there's a way to do it, right? But I was gonna say like even more uh like picked down with the client and when you're talking about in a gym and you're talking about like the smell of the sound, it's also how you're standing and speaking to somebody. Like I do not uh, I am against leaners. Okay, if you lean when you're training someone, I will friggin' take you down. I'm like, the last thing I want to see is when you're training me is you leaning and I am now losing my energy because you're so tired that you can't even stand up for an
Yeah,
hour that
totally.
you're leaning, right? And it's just is my own thing, like the leaning, obviously not texting on the phone and doing all that, but and talking to somebody. So if you're talking to your client about money, it's like even the level that you're on, like physical,
Yeah.
if your client's sitting down and you're standing up talking about rates, no, you guys need to both sit down. You both need to be on the same level. You need to have your arms at your side or behind your back. Don't cross your arms in front. You just need to be aware of all of these things, right? Are you a weirdo talking about money? Then put it in an email.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you lose your shit talking about money with your client, which by the way, it's okay, then tell your client, you know what? Let me do this. Let me just gather all my information together and I will shoot you an email later on this afternoon. And they'll be like, okay, great.
Yeah.
You don't need to, you don't
Great
need to talk
advice.
about it.
No, I
Yeah.
did find a lot of particularly newbie trainers have a big issue of charging what I think they're worth, which is often
Mm-hmm.
more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes from confidence. And you're so
Yeah.
right. Sometimes it's a bit daunting to, like for me, it's easy. I'm like, I say my price and I shut up. And I don't say, oh, if it's too expensive, I can give you a discount, because I don't do that. I don't give discounts.
Yeah. And
But I can be like that because I don't need business. So I can
mm,
say, if you want me to go to Maldives for a week, it'll cost you this much. That's expensive. Yeah, it is.
yeah. And by the way, do you know what the response
Yeah.
and you know what you know what I usually say? I'm like, I totally understand that. And training it's a luxury, I mean,
Yeah.
this is not, it's different, but the it's hard to say your worth to somebody, like I'm X amount of dollars and somebody be like, oh, and then you have to start negotiating yourself, right? It's kind of gross and it's hard to separate yourself from the conversation when we're talking about ourselves it's not like groceries that we're trying to negotiate down. We're talking about ourselves and our services, which then starts building resentment with the client before it even
But we
starts.
have to separate ourselves. Just like if you're a model
Yep,
and
you
you're really big
absolutely.
this season, you get 10,000 a day, and if you have a bad year, you get nothing. It's like you have to have a healthy
You
separation.
you do.
Your product, or part of
You
your
at
product. Yeah.
Dan, you're so right. And that's what I mean. Like I have this physical separation when I'm
Yeah.
talking about myself versus my what I'm offering. So I'm less reactionary. But by the way, I wasn't in the beginning. I mean, like when I first started training, I was very reactionary, and
Yeah, when your first client kind of like wants to finish, you feel like a breakup. It's like,
oh yeah, or
yeah,
like, when someone's like, I can't afford that. I used to think too, like, oh, okay, well, less is better. I should charge less because it's better because then someone want to train with me. But it's actually the opposite.
yeah,
It's weird. It's like people are like, ew, you charge $10 an hour. You must be terrible.
yeah,
Like it's weird. You know what I mean? It's like it's this catch 22. But oh, I mean, I remember I had a woman tell me, I was at training. I was pretty new. And she was taught I said her session was up or her package was up because I didn't know how to put anything in writing.
yeah.
And in the middle of the gym, she's like, I'm not training with you anymore. I haven't lost any weight. So she screamed this, right?
God,
And I was so horrified, but at the same
mortifying.
time, I was mortified. But I took her, we went to the bathroom and I said to her, you know what? I said, that's fine that we don't need to train, but I just want to let you know this is where I work. And these are my coworkers. And I said, and I really feel like you were trying to humiliate me as opposed to just stop the training. And I said, and that's fine. We don't need to train anymore. And that was one of the first times that
Good for you.
I
It
stepped,
takes a bit of balls to do that. That's good. Because when you do that, you realize it's the right thing to do. And it gives you more confidence to be.
and you have to be able to step away from the money. Like it's right. I mean, it's
Well,
like,
the best way of being able to step away from the money is not needing one particular client because you have lots of clients.
right.
You're not slow
And the
to it.
belief and the understanding, and this is an understanding that I have had my whole career. There is no shortage of people in the world,
Hmm.
and there is not a people shortage anywhere. And I will get other clients. Like if I have to create a boundary for myself to end something, I'm like, it's okay. The universe will reward me with a better client because I'm taking care of myself in the right way. And that has always been the case.
I
I
love
mean,
that.
always. There has never been a situation that I've let go of a client or had a boundary or said something where I've ever regretted it,
And
you
what's
know?
really helped me over the years, I'm very, I've started from scratch quite a few times because I've worked as a trainer in different cities,
Mm,
different countries before there was social media. So when I went to New York or went to Rio, went to Sydney, I didn't have any contacts, didn't have any brand. I just had to start from scratch. And when you sort of rock up in a new city, you don't know anyone with basically, I don't come from any kind of money, so you sort of start again. You have to very quickly learn how to build clients in that town. And then I'd
right.
stay for a year, then I'd move, and I've 6, 7 cities across the world. And because I've done that, now it doesn't bother me. Like this pandemic
Mhm.
happening, it was financially, it wasn't that big a stress. I had to pivot and change some things, but I've
Mhm.
been in a lot worse situations.
Mhm.
So it was like fine. And I think the more times you kind of get yourself out there and know what it's like to build business from scratch, and you're gonna get a confidence that it's going to be okay. And for
And
me, I
that's an
have that, so it's
yeah.
really helped me because I don't stress about clients leaving me at all. So when I think of a client, I think it's right to have a break or stop working. I'm the first person to say I think we should have a break now. And if someone wants to see me, I took on a new client the other day. She wants to do 4 times a week. She's very new to training. I was like, it's too
That's a
much.
lot. Yes,
Too
exactly. That's
much.
a lot.
Let's
Yes,
do twice a week
exactly.
and let's review it in a month. But look, if
Yep.
you're trying to lose weight and give up smoking and do this, it's too much. Let's just be as always. No,
Yes.
and it's nice. I can be ethical because I'm not
Yes,
desperate for the
Dan.
money.
Yes.
So links
Exactly.
in when you're kind of more confident, you can actually be more ethical. So it actually gets easier, I find, this job as you get more kind of successful in inverted commas.
It does. And I think that that's important. Like you're saying, the definition of success is also the ethics of,
Mhm.
when I moved to LA, was I 19 or 20? And I had already, I mean, I was already in 12-step program. I was in OA. I had already hit a bottom in my life, emotional bottom. So I was already in a
Wow.
12-step program. So I did already have some, um, uh, what's the barometer. But, as a trainer or even a female trainer, especially if you don't have boundaries, and I'm talking on every level, I'm talking physical, sexual, work,
Yeah,
time,
you have
all
to think
that.
about it more than I would, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to, um, there's, I, I- if I just have always been aware of this, right? So like, I don't, and when I first started training, I didn't train men. I
No.
only trained women in the beginning because I didn't know even how to set those boundaries. So I just didn't even train men in the beginning because I didn't know what the hell else I was
Well, I've
doing.
also seen some of the outfits you used to wear in the 80s, so it makes sense to stay with.
Well, by the way, I mean, I'm wearing my outfit today looks kind of 80s with my one shoulder strap. But, I think now that I understand, it's not very rare. I'm sorry. It's not very often that I have any men that come to me that try to be inappropriate or disrespectful because it's just not the vibe I give off. And also,
They'll be too scared.
I mean,
You'll
I
eat,
think at this
you'll
point,
eat them up for breakfast. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, what are you? I did have one client, this guy sent me an email and was like, I'm staying at a hotel down the street. I trained him once. But see, here's the thing. I knew when I trained him once, there was something wrong with him.
Yeah. You pick up on the
You
vibe.
can feel it. Yeah, you can feel it. But again, just going back to your work thing with as a trainer and these uncomfortable conversations, eh, the focus for all trainers, new trainers especially, needs to be on training people.
Mm.
Forget your social media. Forget all this other stuff right now. It should be on being a good trainer and understanding how to train people. That's what you're
So
like,
for
by the way,
people listening, let's put this in context. I added up my hours a few weeks ago. I've done 27,000 hours of personal training. Ashley, you've done
over 40,000
40,000.
hours.
This is why we're sort of talking today. You've got to put
Yeah.
the hours in. You've got to put the hours in. That's how you learn these stories. You learn this experience. And I think you put the hours in first, and then you worry about marketing a little bit. I wouldn't worry about branding and marketing on day one.
Because what are you branding? Here's the thing. What are you branding and marketing when you don't have a service to offer? Like, do you understand? It's not like with training. It's not like you're like, oh, if you just started and I mean, you have to continue to work with people so you can build this confidence of understanding how to work with people, right? You can't fake it. That's the thing about training. So you can't like get your ACE certification and then you're like, oh my God, I have to really focus now on what is the sound when you hear my logo and you turn on my website. It's like, no. How many hours have you trained a client yet? Have you trained a heavy person, a skinny person, somebody who has an injury, somebody who doesn't, like a younger person, an older person? You have to just get experience, that's important.
That also reminds me of the many bits of bad advice I hear from fitness marketeers, and very much so it's to find a niche. It's like, you've got to find your niche. You got to be the kettlebell person or the over 40s trainer or this or the posture guy. And it's like, no, if you've got a huge passion for, and all you want to do is work on like prenatal care, great. But most of us don't come into fitness knowing this one niche passion we have. We have to just train all types of people to figure out what we like. And I don't specialize at all. I've been doing it for a long time. I don't want to specialize. And everyone says, no, you're supposed to. It's like, well, no, can't you just specialize in being good? You don't have to.
But when you first start, right? Like, okay, so as a female, right? When I first started, the demographic I was the most comfortable working with was the female body because it was myself, right? That's what I was comfortable working with. I also was a recovering person at the time with still am with my eating disorder. So it was like, oh, okay, I'm sure women will be attracted to working with me because I have a good head on my shoulders with it. And yeah, I mean, like the niche thing about what you're teaching, I think also limits yourself as a business person. Like if you're like, I'm just the kettlebell guy, you're kind of limiting yourself to, by the way, you're also limiting yourself traveling because you have to bring your kettlebells everywhere. But like, or it's like if you align yourself, here's that, like when you align yourself too soon with a company that has a bigger name than you.
Yeah, same thing.
Like, like I remember when CrossFit was going on, this guy used to work at his gym and everything was CrossFit him. And I remember I said to him, I'm like, dude, no one is going to ever remember. All I know is CrossFit. I don't know your name.
Yeah.
Like you are your own brand.
You can build your own brand. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was at the time,
but going back to what you said earlier, really interesting point, because like my background before I was a personal trainer, I was a S&C coach, like traditional strength and conditioning coach working with athletes and teams. I did that for quite a while. And I was pretty successful in that world because I didn't focus on one sport. I started off with triathletes, and I moved to tennis, and then fighters. And after about sort of 7-8 years, I got a pretty good reputation because I could think outside the box. So when I had like a ATP tour tennis player, I wouldn't think how normal tennis S&C coaches work. I took things from boxing because boxing is all rotational force, same as when you're doing a backhand. And I took things from different areas, and it made me acutely aware that by accident, just because I get bored really quickly, by training different athletes, I was actually a better S&C coach for, let's say, an ATP tour tennis player than some of the other S&C coaches who've only trained ATP tour tennis players for 10 years. And that made me go, and I very actively, when I became work more general population, I was like, I need to make sure I work with people of all shapes, sizes, personalities. And I was very conscious of not sort of overtly branding myself, even though it happened a little bit because I started training lots of famous models, and then the press would write about me. This is like 15 years ago. That's when I started getting in like Vogue and Tatler and all these like shape and women's health, and they like attaching trainers to like a celebrity name or a model name. So I was sort of known as the model trainer in the public eye, but in my real work, I wasn't that. I was training everybody, and that's how I grew. And I was good training models because I trained them like athletes, not like
Right,
models.
right, right.
So
And
yeah.
that's such a good point because I also, I mean, I've trained Nick Swisher, who is an outfielder for the Yankees, and Brian Wilson, who is pitcher, World Series pitcher. People on Revenge Body who are incredibly overweight, people who are
Mm.
recovering who are very
Yeah.
skinny, people. I mean, all different types of people,
That's
right?
that's
And
one of the reasons why you're good, because you can work with all different types of people.
thank you. Well, thank you. But I mean, that's now, right? I mean, and here's the thing. That's after 30 years of training. Like, and by the way, full time, this is my career and learning, right? So, and I'm still always learning. You know what? I'll tell you. It's like you said, the respect from your peers is so important to you.
Mm.
That is the probably ultimate for me too. Most important thing is like, if I'm doing something, I look at it through the eyes of peers of people I respect. Like, well, would Dan think this is a bunch of bullshit, or this is, or whatever? And I was I have these rebounders that I work with rebounders, and LeBron James's trainer, Mike Manassas is, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. Manassas, yeah. And he's a fantastic trainer. He's also a WAF trainer, right?
Oh,
He
cool.
he
Yeah, yeah.
works with WAF Studio as well. He's, I think, partial owner now. But he had texted me to ask like what would be a good rebounder for LeBron, because at the time he had injured his ankle. And I said, and he asked if he could get a rebounder like ASAP. And I was like, oh my God, there's no way. Like they can't ship a rebounder in a day with Bellicon. And so I said, you know what? I have two of them. And one of them, we just switched out everything brand new. If you want, you can come pick up this one and he can have that one. So LeBron has my rebounder now, and I gave it to Mike. But the point of the story is that made my entire year, and I will tell you why, above anything else, because Mike, who I respect so much as a trainer and a coach, asked my opinion about equipment for his high level athlete, right? And that to me is means more to me than having my name somewhere, or like, being on Revenge Body, because to
Mm.
me it means like, oh, okay, somebody like Mike, who I respect so much, sees me. Do you know what I mean? He sees the value I give to other trainers and coaches, and so he's asking my opinion. So it's kind of the same thing you're saying. It's like those are the things that mean something to me about being a trainer and being able to help other people and trainers,
Yeah.
is that mutual respect amongst our peers, right? Um and not like, oh, the people they train. Mike is a great trainer. He's been with LeBron forever, but it's because he's a great coach, a great trainer. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I don't know. I think that is a very you need to know who are you speaking to, in your business. Like, I'm speaking to new people who don't know what they're doing. And I'm also speaking to trainers like you or Mike or Danielle or my friends who I respect, and how they're looking at what I'm
Yeah.
offering.
It's all about being aware, isn't it, really? Keeping your eyes open.
Yeah, exactly. And also not being an asshole. I can't even tell you, like, if you're not a team player, you're just not,
You get
it's
found
not,
out. You get found out eventually, and it's like I say, we're an interesting world. We're an interesting profession where it's seen very solitary because we're all kind of, most of us are self-employed or run our own businesses.
Mhm.
But the more you kind of go on, the more you realize that it's collaboration is where you really grow, and getting advice from other trainers, and like I'm chatting to you now, and it's like it's they're the kind of sort of magic moments, and you have to kind of be, if you're a dick, people will talk about you, particularly as you get more well known, because
Yeah.
everyone kind of knows each other. And in this kind of world of training, in the world of, like, it's full of niches, I guess, like the world of social media influencer training, it's full of little niches. In the world of
Mhm.
celebrity training, there's only about 20 of us who do it, who
Right.
regularly get these clients. It's a very small world.
And I think you said a word earlier, which is so true. You need to be an asset, not a liability. Like, if you are not an asset in whatever you're doing and bringing to your client, then it's not going to last. So whenever you're doing anything, whatever environment you're working in, whether it's high level people, not high level people, a group, not a group, a team, a sport, uh, a posse of people, you need to look at take an overview of the whole thing and be like, am I being an asset right now? Am I being helpful? Like, are people saying like, oh my God, Dan is so helpful. Dan is like, I love having Dan around because Dan is like, he's such a team player and I like Dan's energy. And like, those are the things, you want people saying about, you don't want, oh, Jesus, please don't ask Dan. All he does is ask questions and never knows where he's going.
This is what having a brand is, be it a personal brand or a business brand. It's people talking about you behind your back. That's what PR is. That's what we want.
I guess you're right.
That's what it is. If you're a nice person and, if you really spend time helping people, people will talk about you in nice ways. If you're really good if you write some articles or work with journalists, after working 5 or 6 journalists, they will start talking about you behind your back, which is what you want. It's how you get more.
Right. If you are, responding and on time. Yes, exactly.
All those things. If you take it seriously.
Exactly. And I guess that's one other, if we're going to kind of wrap up of advice. I mean, when you get to the level when you're starting to work with journalists or you're doing interviews or all that, I will tell you more times than not, I would always hear, God, Ashley, you respond immediately. Yeah. You respond immediately. You respond immediately. And there's 2 reasons I do. One is because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll forget. And just because I want to get off my plate of things to do. But my reputation amongst editors is that I'm very reliable. I respond immediately. I'm a pleasure to work around because, I'm not an asshole.
Also, I think it comes from having knowledge. If you have empathy, if you understand when a journalist contacts, they need to write a feature in the next few days, they will have a list of their ideal trainer or who's probably they've worked with before. And if they don't respond in 2 days, they'll go for number 2 on the list, number 3.
Oh, yeah.
They've got to write the article. And quite often, I know when I got my first times I was asked to do comments, it was because some other trainer more famous than me was too slow to respond. And that's how I got my in. So I'm not going to let that go now. So I'm like you, I answer immediately and I'm press contact me to give quotes. I don't have to reach out to them now.
Exactly.
And it's so much nicer because I've spent 10 years being really good, answering questions and not saying, oh, please, can you pitch this? I'm like, yeah, I can help you. Quite often I've helped journalists and like, you don't even need to feature me. If you want help with an article, I'll just help you. Don't bother writing
exactly.
That. They remember that. And it's because I care and it builds relationships.
Exactly.
And it's all about.
And that goes a long way. And that's, I mean, journalists and editors switch from place to place and they remember. I mean, let me tell you, they remember. So, for years I used to fly to New York and do desk sides back in the day when people were doing desk sides where you would go to New York and you would meet with all these different editors and sit next to their desk in their office and tell them what's going on in LA and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I would fly myself there and pay for the ticket and pay for my hotel and pay for my car service and do 20 or 30 desk sides every year. And
wow.
Because I was told that's what I was supposed to do. And so I would do this, as much as I could every year and, call and editors in advance and let them know I'm coming and blah, 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 stuff. So it's like, it's things that look like they're easy or just happening for people. It's like, there is a lot, have you ever seen that image of the iceberg where you just see the tip of the iceberg and then underneath the water is like this, 50-mile iceberg because you can only see the top of it above the water. It's like that to me is the same thing with the entrepreneurial career. It's like the iceberg you don't see underneath the water is really what is the body of all of it.
You've got to be strategic. And I talk about this a lot. Like in my early career, like I've been increasingly interested in the business side, but only in the last sort of like 6-7 years. Previously, I just wanted to be kind of like the best coach in my head, like from like 16 when I started, like I want to be one of the best coaches in the world. And I tried to figure out what that meant. And for me, I was like, there's a few criteria in my mind what that meant. And then I kind of actively made choices to sort of, it's hard to quantify.
I know exactly what you mean.
I was like, okay, I want peers to respect me. I want to have an academic, how can I be respected academically? I was like, well, that's why I spent a year actually being a lecturer on the personal trainer course. So I actually worked for a company, which I didn't enjoy doing that much, but I figured it would be good for my CV, where I taught people how to be trainers. And now I create qualifications now. And that ticks a box because it's part of the brand I want. And
but you were looking at your bigger, but you were looking even back then at the bigger overview of your entire career. Even when you were
starting. I still do now. I mean, I did a post there on Instagram about stuff I want to do when I retire. How am I like I've got things, I'm thinking about like legacy now. I'm thinking about creating things which will outlive me, because I'm mid 40s. I want to retire in my mid 60s. If I start thinking about it now, it'll be completely solidified by the time I'm mid 50s. So
See?
you have to think, it's that kind of old kind of Tony Robbins quote: people massively overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And it's so true.
It's so
And
true.
we have to
And
think
it's
long
just like
term.
one thing at a time, I mean,
Yeah.
I I I'm very ADHD,
Mm.
very. And so
All the fun
working,
people are.
huh?
All the fun people are.
I know. I feel like a lot of trainers, I feel like a lot of personal trainers are, for whatever reason. It's like it works. Generally, when you have ADHD, it works best when you work for yourself, when you create your own timeline and you have your own
A
deadlines.
lot of actors, musicians are ADHD. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
And for me, I had to discipline myself um to be able to run the business so it works the way it works for me. And I think that what gets in the way of a lot of new trainers is they judge themselves about how they're running their business, because they're like, "Oh, well, I'm sure this isn't how I'm supposed to do it, or this isn't working this way," and it's like I just found, like, if you have a system of things that are working for you and it works that way, then like for instance, like I used to have clients that are like, you need to develop an Excel spreadsheet. And on your Excel spreadsheet, I want you to, I was like, okay, wait, first of all, I don't even know how to create an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. So I was like, I, I can't do this. And then it started shutting me down because of what they were asking me to do. Because
Okay.
I was like, so then I said, oh, well, what if I just write it on the whiteboard instead for you? And she was like, oh, yeah, that's great. And I was like, and I had to take a picture of it. And she was like, that's perfect. So I was like, oh, okay, I could do it that way. That works for me. And that's what slowly builds in your career when you're an entrepreneur, is that you get to create your business in a way that works for you in particular.
It's a really good point, because we talked earlier off air about how you stayed agile
Hmm.
you've kept your business quite small on purpose so you
Hmm.
can pivot and change. And I've done it a bit of a different way. I'm not as quite as agile, and it's like there's some pros and cons to that. But let's explore that a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, is you have a company. I don't know how it works in America. Like in England, we have a limited company, we have partnerships, limited companies, and self-employed. But we have a limited, like, I'm guessing you're a limited liability company, right? Like a LLC.
I am actually an S corporation now. I
What
changed.
does that
So
mean
for
exactly?
tax purposes out here, an S corporation is just taxed differently,
Okay.
as opposed to an LLC, which is a limited liability
Okay.
corporation. So it changed during the Trump administration. It had changed as far as the tax liability out here. By the way, California, I'm in the 32% tax division. So taxes here are ridiculous. And my strategy moving is that I will not be buying a place here. I will be probably buying it in Nevada, because it's a much better tax situation. I'm closer to LA. But sorry, I ranted off. But I
I was just
also
like asking
interrupted you.
about the corporate structure, as it were, because like
Yes,
we
S
have
corp.
ours are quite different. So yours is more agile than mine. I'm quite jealous.
Mm.
So
Oh,
it was an active decision to keep it quite small. So you don't have employees, do you?
oh, you mean not expanding and bringing other
Yeah,
employees and people
yeah,
on?
exactly.
Oh, no, I have an assistant,
Yeah,
Luce Tomlin Brenner, who's fantastic, and she and I've worked together, I think, almost 3 years now. I've had many assistants over the years, and again, that's a whole nother podcast we can even talk about building your
tell me about
friggin'. Oh my
it.
God. But she's a godsend and great, because I knew what to finally look for after
Yeah.
8,000 years of looking for the wrong thing. Um, and no, I mean, in the beginning of my career, people were like, you should have other trainers working underneath you. And then those trainers could train those people and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want to manage people. I manage my clients. I didn't want to manage people, because it's like wrangling
Yeah.
cats. And I've, again, worked in the gym industry for so long. I know how it works, and I know how it is I just know how it is. And that, to me, for me personally, Ashley Borden, that was not the road I wanted to take, of having other people working underneath me.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing is, I can't teach you, I can't teach you my instinct. Like I could teach you some of the stuff that I teach, but like the way that I am as a trainer is incredibly intuitive. And as I think you are too. And so a lot of it for me was like, I could teach you some of the stuff, but it's like, you can't.
I mean, I find it really hard to have gone, I had a team of 10 trainers back when I had a gym in central London several years ago. And that's when I also got interested more in the academic side of things. So I was creating like courses for them, and I was trying to create like nationally accredited courses teaching about communication skills and how to build rapport and also how to teach. And it was that became such a massive process, and actually just running them. I had to employ an operations manager to look after the trainers because they were so shit with their paperwork. And then I had to get like a second company. I mean, it gets bigger and bigger. So at the moment, I've got like a holding company. I've got 3 LLCs and a holding company on top. And it gets confusing. And it's like, but it works for me because I've got, for my ambitions for where I want to go, I need to have separate corporate entities, and I need a strong corporate foundation to do certain things. What I want to do, I haven't done yet. So it works.
And you're staying, but you're still, it's also funneled in the same direction of Dan Roberts and your stuff. It's not like you're doing like 3 different companies that don't all, it's all going towards the same goal.
They all serve as to give a solid platform for me to do what I want to do, to share my message and to help people. But for tax reasons and for just integrity of the business, it makes sense to, for example, with my programs, I have separate companies looking after the programs. For my business education division, I guess, where I do my mentoring and I have my qualifications, and my upcoming academy, that's a separate company, because it makes sense to do it that way, particularly because I plan to expand them. So if you plan to expand them, making over like, $200,000, $300,000 a year, then it makes sense to have a separate company, separate accounts, because it's
that's
easier
smart
to grow. Yeah, that's all. But you have to learn about this stuff. I mean, I did a business degree, but I never really learned this stuff at business school, because the actual reality of actually cash flow, like I've learned how to do do you do all this like forecasting and cash flow? I look at like, I do all of this stuff. I look at what's happening in the next like year, and I predict what my income's going to be. Then I go, okay, so I'm going to make more money here, so I can invest more there. And it's all,
gosh, I mean, that's amazing.
Not really, because it's like, it's very time consuming, but I like learning about that side of things. But it's
but that you just said the key words, right? That you like learning about that side of things. And it's like, I use the book Strengths Finder all the time when I coach people, because the book Strengths Finder 2.0 is a fantastic, helpful book for anybody who needs to learn more about themselves and understand what their strengths are in business. Most people, because most people, what they do is they focus on what they're not good at. So they're like, I'm not good at Excel spreadsheets. I'm going to hire a tutor and I'm going to spend 4 hours a week learning how to do Excel spreadsheets, as opposed to, oh, wait, maybe that's something that I should like service out to somebody else, and let me continue to do what I'm good at and focus on what my strengths are. And, that's how you're also a better business owner, is that I know what my strengths are: communication, significance, competition, all these things. But part of what's not my strength is activation. So I have to have somebody that's good at activating all of my ideas to help me activate them to come true. That's where Luce is very good with me, is the activation aspect of it. But you don't know these things inherently unless you either do the Myers-Briggs testing that you do, or you do the strengths.
You just try. You just get on with it and try. You find out what your strengths and weaknesses are by doing something and realizing, oh, I'm not very good at that. Like, you try to do your accounts and you think, oh my God, I'm terrible at accounts.
Right. But the mindset is that I think most people think that you should only focus and get better at what you're not good at, as opposed to only focus and do what you're good at. And it's like, it's such a freeing message when I'm like, oh, I get to just communicate and talk and help people, and help people find their significance and this is great. But if you told me that I had to do all this activation side of things, of the inside minutia that doesn't work for my brain, I'm like, I'm completely paralyzed and I don't know what I'm doing.
It's freeing. It actually reminds me of a fitness analogy. I had a tennis guy I used to work with many years ago. He was #1 tennis player in India, but he was really overweight. He was a big guy, like 6'9", which is quite rare in India.
Wow.
And he had the fastest serve in Asia at the time, a guy called Anjan. But he was very overweight. He was a big guy. He couldn't move around the court. And his coaches came to me and said, look, we've got like off season, we've got like 3 months. We need to get him moving better around the court, because he's he was really overweight, like 2 stone overweight. And we'd begin to compete with the guys, and he was already like 29 at this time, so he was coming to the end of his career. And I kind of watched him, and this is where, as a coach, you don't have to always facilitate people's goals. You have to actually think what's best. You have to be a leader. And because I understand the game of tennis, understand he was nearing his end of his career, I disagreed with their view. I was like, look, he's never going to be moving around the court like Michael Chang or whoever quickly. He just won't. He's just like, in 3 months, we can't change that. What we can do, he's never done any powerlifting or proper strength training. He's that tall. He's already got the fastest serve in Asia. We can make his serve even more powerful. And that means he can, like, if he's got even more power, it means his second serve, when he's holding 20% back, can still get aces. He'll win all the service games. So I kind of talked to them about it, and I kind of, because I used to be a tennis coach. That was my first job. I was an ATP tennis coach for years. So I was like, trust me on this one. And all we did was power training. So it was the exact opposite. We just worked on his strengths. And it seemed like I was being silly, but no, I was showing leadership, using a bit of brains, and it worked. And he went up the rankings, like 350 in the world to like 180, which at the time was, for him, that was like a huge success.
Right. And you were using the things that were your gifts also as a strength and conditioning coach, and everything you've done before in your career.
Disagreeing, because quite often clients come to you saying, I want this and this. And you as a leader should be like, I hear you. My take is, you're right, you should do this and this, but also I think you're wrong there, and I think you should do this. That's how you can sort of charge the big bucks, when you actually lead. And,
right.
And it's helping people with their strengths. That's what reminded me, like, you're so right. When we focus on our strengths, and kind of outsource our weaknesses as a business, it makes, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did this very famously in Apple. You have to do that. That's such
a good way of saying it. Outsource your weaknesses, because that's the way that you can create a team of people that can help you get to where you want to go. But if you don't know what your weaknesses are, then you don't know who to look for to help you. And this is what's crucial, is that for a long time, when you're building a business, or you're even looking for your first assistant or somebody to help you, it's different what you're looking for in a business assistant than what you're looking for as your friend. And completely different set of expectations or things that you're looking for, right? So and I think a lot of times in LA, I see a lot of people hiring assistants based on what they look like, because they bring them places with them. Yeah. Seriously, they bring them places with them, and they want them all. I mean, which is also ridiculous. And it's like, when I finally did my last hiring of finding another assistant, I had them take the Strengths Finders test. The people that I was interviewing, I had them take it, so I knew what their strengths were when we started. And then I had specific questions I was asking them about, what does X look like for you? What does it look like? What is your worst nightmare of an employer? What does a best day look like? What does a worst day look like? A lot of questions that I would want people to ask me. And Luce, who I ended up hiring, ended up being such the perfect person for me, because she cared. I was like, look, I just you have to fucking care. Like, you can't. I had a girl I had before this that would literally show up at my house with her backpack on. She wouldn't even take her jacket or her backpack off. She was couldn't wait to get the fuck out of my house, that it was like, I was like, girl, I can't, you have to take your backpack off. And like, it felt like I was inconveniencing her all the time, even though I was paying her non-inconvenient money. You know what I mean? So it's just that's really the key, is that when you really know what you need, right? But you don't know what you need until you know what your strengths are. So going back, take the Strengths Finder 2.0 test. Every single person listening to this, it is, even if you don't own a business yet, it is life-changing to know what your strengths are. And from there, you're able to really build your business around you. And also when you know what your strengths are, I could say to you, Dan, look, communication is my strength. Okay. So I can help you with this if you want me to sit and listen to what the issue is or whatever. And by the way, when you take the Strengths Finder and it tells you what your strengths are, you're like, I knew that. That makes sense. You know what I mean? You're like, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But anything which helps you understand yourself and understand how to work with people is always going to have whatever kind of, business you want to get into. And sometimes people have the word business has scary connotations. So people have worked in, let's say, a normal corporate job, and they want to maybe take a leap and they want to become a trainer, or they want to be an entrepreneur, the idea of like learning about business can be overwhelming. But business is just understanding people, and
Yes.
you kind of make mistakes on the way. But if you're nice, if you're kind, and you're open-minded, you can kind of learn stuff on the way, right?
And let me also say that there are times, right, where we have to there have been times that I've had to be very clear, and I'm not worried about okay, it's this. You can't I can't be worried about how you receive me. All I can be worried about is how I give my information to you. And as a female, especially, and I did a post about this before, that being direct is not being a bitch.
No,
But in business, right? They are like, oh, she's direct, or she's aggressive, or she's angry. It's like, because you're direct, right? And that's negative. But a
it's definitely
man,
it's definitely harder for women on this.
right? A man's
Yeah.
direct, and they're like, oh, he's such a business guy. He's a command of the room, So what I'm saying is that there's, a long time ago, I let go of like, it's okay. Me be direct and asking for what I need is fine. If you haven't, by the way, many people have issues with my directness sometimes if I'm in a work environment, but I'm like, it's okay. It's not the
Have you
first
seen
time.
the Lady Gaga documentary? I think it's called 5'2",
I
Netflix.
I
It's
did not see
fascinating.
that yet.
Fascinating. There's a bit where she's basically laying into her backing dancers for doing things wrong, but she's so assertive in a really nice way. She's like, we've got to do this, this, and this, and it's just a scene where you realize, wow, she really is the boss.
Ah,
And it was great.
uh-huh.
I thought it was fantastic because it's like she knew exactly the vision she wanted and the type of dance moves from her backing dancers, and they weren't giving her, and she was explaining directly but really clearly. And I think
Right.
sometimes people don't realize that artists, entrepreneurs, musicians, you have to be clear about what you want. You don't have to be an
Yes.
asshole, but you have to be clear.
Yeah. Just
You
have
have
to
to
be
be.
clear. And I think
Otherwise, it won't be your vision. And if you've got, particularly like in my kind of field where I have people working for me and represent, I have a lot of trainers now around the world representing me because they've studied for my courses and they're using my name to help promote their business
mhm.
in whatever country they're in. So I need to be sure that they're representing me right. So if they're not,
Have you ever had anyone where you're like, no?
course. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I've had employees, and yeah, I've gone through that a lot, and it's not a fun part. What I find is having gone through the process of having to fire people, having to tell people off, having arguments with people,
Mhm.
you have to it makes you much better at hiring, and it makes you more
Mhm.
selective in terms of even my group instructors I have, my MX group instructors all over the world. I'm I on purpose don't massively advertise that because I want people who've done their research and want to
To
actually,
come to
because I
yes,
don't
come
really
to
need it like financially because it's not my main source of income. So I can let that organically grow, and I'm making sure it's the right kind of people. And if it's not the right kind of person, I'm like, you know what, I don't think this course is for you. And it's fine because I'm not putting like a paid advert on there where I have to make return and
right,
I can,
right.
so it allows me. So now the people I have as instructors are the right tone of people. They're that had the right kind of vibe about them. And then once
That's
you have like 30 or 40, and then when other people see them, the culture's kind of set. Then it's easy to
because it's
grow.
organic grassroots of
Yeah,
the right type of people rather than pushing
I'm not in
it.
a rush, so I'm a very lucky situation. If I was in a rush, it'd be harder.
Right.
Have that business model, that kind of Zumba business model, where you're making money from the trainer as opposed to the end user, which is
Right.
the business model for that particular business. So, but yeah, it's all learning, isn't it? It's all.
Well, and I think it's also like when it's other companies, like when you also get to a point, you get a lot of other companies and people wanting to do things with you. Now, here's a and it's the being able to hone the yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like, do I go down this road and say yes and start? Maybe do I work with this thing? Do I not? I mean, when you get asked a lot of stuff, I've been asked for years to sit on many boards of different companies of things. And I've always been like, no, because I only know what I know. And when this company Gijo had approached me, this was like a year process of me even being like, yes, I want to sit on your board. But this was like the first, this is I've never, I have a lot of different platforms. I'm sure you do too, platforms that approach, they're like, we have a new trainer platform that we're doing and new trainer platform. And everyone has these platforms.
Yeah.
This was such a unique situation. And they gave me such room to help develop it that I was like, oh, this is everything I've ever wanted to do. So it's like, and by the way, this is after what, 40,000 hours of training people that I'm now sitting on a board of something to help another company where we're doing a platform that helps other trainers. So I'm not working in an environment that has nothing to do with my career. And that's where people also, I think, get pulled off course is they're like, kind of like doing offshoots of things that are similar, but not. So I feel like, all the ideas that people do in their business and their entrepreneurship, whether it's training, should still lead down the same pathway.
It's a really good point, I think. But it's easier when you know yourself and know what you stand for.
Yes.
Like we
Yes.
both know what our business stand for. We know why we do it. So I always tell people like you only really truly know what you stand for when you say no to opportunities, when you say no to money, because then you know.
Yeah.
Be it a type of client. If you're like, I'm only going to train guys, that's my thing. I'm only going to train guys, and that's why I'm going to promote myself. And a girl wants to hire you. Well, then you should say no. You shouldn't say yes. Okay, I'll do it, because that misses the point. You should always stick to however fucked up your principles are. You need to have them, and you need to stick to them.
Right. Have your
Yeah,
integrity.
that's what integrity is. Integrity is, I mean, how do we define it? But it's kind of the promises you say to yourself, right? It's the kind of the stuff you do when no one else is looking.
Right. Okay. I remember when I was training Suge Knight. Do you know
Oh
who
yeah,
Suge Knight is?
yeah.
Okay. And this is like years ago, but I had met him. He wanted to have a meeting. We met at the Four Seasons. I met and had a business lunch with him about training. And, before we started the meeting, when we sat down, I said to him, look, I don't mean any disrespect at all. I said, but I just want to be really upfront with you. If you're interested in anything other than me training and helping you, I have a boyfriend. And I said, and I just don't want to waste your time. And by the way, you might not even remotely be interested in me, but I just wanted to be upfront before we started.
Mm-hmm.
He was super cool. He was like, no, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know what he wanted at the time, but he was like, no, it's no problem. But I had to say that first to establish that. We did end up training like a handful of times, and I was training. Wait, now I forgot the whole reason why I was bringing up Suge Knight, but there was a point to this. You had said something, and then oh shit, I can't
I'm
remember
so
now what the
tired.
point.
I've been talking for like 2 hours.
I
Just
don't know. You know what? The moral of the story is I need to eat. The Suge Knight story we'll talk about another time. Dan, you're amazing. You and I could sit and talk for 10 hours.
Let me ask you a final couple of little questions just to finish off. For people who want to get into, they want to be coaches. Like they look at your career and they go, oh my God, I want to do that. How should they start? What's the place to start? They're working their job they don't like, but they really want to be like a fitness or nutrition or lifestyle coach. What advice would you give them?
I would say that you need to ask yourself, what about this do you love? Like, what is it that you love? If you love nutrition, what is it about the nutrition? Is it that you love giving people the food? Is it that you love to help people figure out their relationship with food? Is it like you have to figure out what aspect of this is it that you love, and that what aspect of it is that you want to help other people? So just because you might love yoga yourself personally doesn't necessarily mean that you want to teach it in teacher training 4,000 hours to teach other people, right? So, and people sometimes are realize that, you know what I mean? So I would say go down any path you want with wanting to help people. But again, ask yourself, do I want to help other people learn this, right? Or is this just something that I like personally, which is fine too.
Yeah.
If you like that personally, but I think that helps. And then I would say that you really do need to, education is really important. So
How do,
whether that,
how do educational on business or on
oh,
actual
are you talking
living?
about training? Well, let me
Well,
tell you
there's so many.
okay, with my personal training, I did have a mentor. Carl List was my training mentor. And after I'd already trained for 10 years, I trained for 10 solid years, like a workhorse. And then I looked up after 10 years and injured myself. And then that's how I started working with Carl List, who changed my whole life after my injury. So I would say, and I also paid to work with him, and he let me mentor underneath him. But I would say, if you have somebody that you really love, that you think are great, pay to work with them. Like I did with many trainers, I would pay them and be like, can I do some sessions with you?
Yeah.
So I could absorb what they know and learn that way. Here's what's annoying. Don't email trainers and be like, can I pick your brain? No, because what the question is, are you available for me to hire for some coaching? Can I pick your brain is code for, can you talk to me and me not pay you?
It's funny. I got one of my mentoring packages is pick my brain session, and it's quite expensive, and they pay.
Okay,
And
there you go.
they can pick my brain, but I call it pick my brain because I get
That's exactly,
so much. I was like, I'm just going to call it that.
it's an expensive brain to pick. So, I mean, like it's just the, it's just all the experience. So, and don't be afraid to find mentors of people. If you like, Dan and your philosophy and what you do, then invest in that stuff that you offer. It's like, I invest in the stuff from coaches of people that you like their stuff. I think it's also, I've paid for many other trainers programs full price just so I can see what they're doing and learn from it. I mean, that's the best way to also understand what people are doing.
Tell me about your mentoring program if people are interested in it.
So the
Describe.
personal coaching that I'm doing
Yeah.
is also kind of like same thing you did. It's like I don't have a button that's just like coaching, book here, because it's like I don't have a ton of time to do it. So if somebody really, finds my email and they ask me to do it, then we do the personal coaching. It starts at 800 an hour depending on what the deal is and what I'm talking to with people. But that's because I don't have the time and it's so expensive to do it. That's when I created, and this has been literally over the course of my entire career, but we've been putting this in actual editing now. It's been a year almost of these 5 courses, these business courses that we're doing. I have a tentative name for it, but the trainer
Any of it?
chapters.
Can you talk about?
Huh?
Any of it? Can you talk
Yes, of course. I could talk
about?
about all of it, but I've been chatting our brain off. But it's all the stuff that we've been talking here. It's these different chapters of your training life and experience, and down to the minutia of examples of things like communication, emails. Like I have examples of text messages, 2 examples of like, here's a text message that has no communication. Here's a text message of how to communicate with your clients that gives you direct communication. Emails, right? Examples of this is not the way to communicate with your clients with emails. And this is an actual
Oh, I
way
love.
that I communicate with my clients with emails. Here's how I structure. I mean, like down to every way that I have worked. And again, I always tell people, this is just the courses of what has worked for me, Ashley Borden, in my career, where I have been able to dominate and have longevity and respect in this career that I'm doing. I'm teaching everybody the stuff that I've done. High-end clientele, whether or not you're ever going to get to there or not, I'm going to go through every single scenario of stuff that you and I have talked about. It's all the things that you can't find. This is what we were saying before. It's like trainers will tell you the funnels, but I'm telling you from my story. So the way that the education works is it's my real life stories of all my shit with training in this business for so long, mixed in with actual practical business information and functional how to.
And when's this coming out?
We are done with, we've done editing everything. And now we're in the actual layering and putting it into the visual part of it. So I would say like maybe probably be ready in like 3 months. It's going to be, Dan, I'm going to tell you all about it because it is,
Oh, cool.
there is no one else who has this out there because most people don't want to share all the shit. And I'm like, you know what? I want everyone to know. So that's the way that it's going to be now for people to be able to learn it as a one-stop shop.
That's so exciting. Well, my big thing, which I'll tell you about off air, is launching in December, which is like, I guess, similar-ish, my take on this. But yeah, I'll talk about that with you later.
That's where you and I, we need to talk because I think we got.
Mine's not ready to talk about yet, but I'm so excited you're doing it. And again, I guess you're the only person doing it now, but there's not many people doing this. And it's like to actually have the mixture of business expertise, but also the stories and the passion of helping.
Well, I think the reason why there's not a lot of people doing it is because there's not a lot of
people doing
trainers that are still at this amount of experience, right? That still are maybe relevant, still want to help other people. I could probably name a handful of people, but so that's why I'm doing this is I want to help all the trainers.
Can't wait to look at this course. It sounds brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Dan, thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. How can people find you? What's the best way?
People can find me. I'd say every single link of everything is on my Instagram. So Ashley Borden Fitness or my website, ashleyborden.com.
I love your video on your homepage.
Oh, thank you.
I really like that. It's cool.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like, oh, I got to change my website, but thank you, Dan. Thank you. So yeah, everything is available on my website, or it's broken down in my link tree on my Instagram page, Ashley Borden Fitness.
Ashley, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your candor. I always love talking to you. Thank you. I'm sure the listeners will take a lot. We talked about so many different topics there, but I'm sure there'll be some pearls of wisdom they can grab. So thank you again.
Of course. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Business School, the official podcast of the Dan Roberts Academy. To find out more about how we help coaches, instructors, and fitness entrepreneurs upskill and enjoy more success, please see danrobertsgroup.com or follow us on Instagram at the Dan Roberts Academy.